I always believed I had the kind of life most men dream about. A steady job, a warm home, and a family that made it all worthwhile. My wife, Layla, was everything to me: graceful, intelligent, and endlessly patient. We'd been married for 15 years, and while we had our share of arguments, nothing ever cracked the foundation we built together. Or so I thought. Our son, Aiden, had just turned 17. Quiet, thoughtful, and unusually mature for his age. While most teenagers his age rebelled or stayed glued to their phones, Aiden preferred long walks, deep conversations, and reading books that even I found too dense. He respected his mother, treated me kindly, and always did well in school. I used to joke that we somehow raised an old soul in a young body. We lived in a modest but cozy house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. I worked in logistics, frequent travel, long hours, but the pay was decent and the bills were always covered. Layla managed a small boutique online, and Aiden helped her when I was away. It all seemed perfect. But looking back now, perfection was just a mask, one I wore proudly, too blind to notice it slipping. It started with the silences. Not the comfortable ones that come with time, but awkward pauses that lingered between questions. I'd come home from trips and find Layla distant. Not angry, just strangely preoccupied. Her phone, once carelessly tossed on the kitchen counter, was now always face down. Aiden, too, had grown quieter. Not the natural quiet of a teen, but something heavier, like he was holding his breath around me. Still, I dismissed it. Work stress, maybe. Or just part of growing up. I didn't want to be the paranoid father or suspicious husband. I trusted them both more than I trusted myself. One night, while flipping through old family albums, I found myself staring at a photo of us on a beach trip 2 years ago. Layla had her arms around Aiden and me, beaming at the camera. We looked happy. We were happy. But something about the way her eyes lingered on Aiden in another photo, something too soft, too tender, stirred a discomfort I couldn't explain. I shook it off. Maybe I was just tired, seeing ghosts where there were none. Still, doubt had taken root. And once doubt enters a home, it doesn't knock again. The next morning, as I left for another 3-day trip, Layla kissed my cheek with a strange urgency. Aiden stood nearby, watching silently. "Be safe," she said. "I always am," I replied with a smile, but inside, something felt off, like I was walking away from a chapter I'd never get back. I looked back at them from the doorway. A picture-perfect family. But something had shifted. I just didn't know yet how far it had already gone. 3 days turned into 2. A client canceled at the last minute, and instead of staying at a hotel that night, I decided to surprise my family. I imagined Layla's smile, Aiden's quiet nod, the warmth of being home unexpectedly. I even picked up her favorite pastries from a roadside bakery, excited to see their reactions. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was just after 9 p.m. The house was mostly dark, except for a dim light in the hallway upstairs. I entered quietly, not out of suspicion, but to savor the moment. The smell of lavender, Layla's usual nighttime scent, drifted down the staircase. I smiled. Then I heard it. A voice, soft, hushed, and unmistakably hers, murmuring behind the bedroom door. The words weren't clear at first, just the tone. Gentle, intimate. Then a phrase slipped through the silence like a knife through cloth. "Take it easy, son." My steps faltered. I froze mid-hallway, unable to process what I'd just heard. There was no urgency, no maternal concern. It wasn't the voice of a mother comforting her child. It was something else. A low murmur responded. Aiden. His voice, closer, deeper than usual. I took a step back, heart pounding. My mind raced through possibilities. Was he hurt? Crying? Was she calming him down? But that tone, it didn't fit. I hesitated, then knocked, firm, deliberate. A long pause. Then footsteps. The door opened slowly, and Layla appeared, startled. "Why, you're back early," she stammered, pulling her robe tighter. Aiden was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to me, shirtless, but covered in a blanket. He turned, clearly caught off guard. His eyes, wide, blank, met mine for a split second before looking away. "I thought I'd surprise you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything okay?" Layla nodded too quickly. He had a nightmare. I was just talking him through it. He's been having a hard time lately. I looked between them. Their faces were unreadable, rehearsed, even. Something about the air in that room felt stale, too still. Like I'd interrupted more than a conversation. I said nothing more. Just handed her the pastry bag, kissed her cheek, and retreated to the guest room. I couldn't sleep. My mind spun in quiet circles. At breakfast the next morning, the usual warmth was gone. We barely spoke. Aiden avoided my gaze. Layla kept glancing at her phone. I needed answers, but not accusations. If there was something to uncover, I had to see it for myself. That evening, while they were out getting groceries, I installed a discreet camera in the living room, a place they often spent time when I wasn't around. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was instinct. And deep down, I already feared what I'd find. I told myself I was overreacting, that the camera would prove me wrong, that I'd watch hours of innocent footage and feel ashamed for ever doubting them. But the truth doesn't wait for permission. It simply arrives, raw and merciless. 2 nights later, I sat alone in my car outside the office, staring at my phone screen. The footage had finished uploading. I pressed play. At first, nothing unusual. Layla sat on the couch in her usual evening robe. Aiden joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. They chatted casually, their voices muffled but lighthearted. I almost relaxed, until Aiden placed his hand on her knee. I leaned in. She didn't move it away. Instead, she smiled. Not the way a mother smiles at her child, but the way a woman looks at someone she shouldn't want. The air between them grew charged, intimate, dangerous. Then came the part that changed everything. Aiden leaned closer and whispered something into her ear. She laughed, soft and breathy, then touched his face, lingering too long, too tenderly. Her fingers traced his jaw, like a lover would. And then she rested her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes. No lines had been crossed physically, not yet. But emotionally, they were standing knee-deep in betrayal. I paused the video. My hands trembled. This wasn't just a blurred boundary. This was a bond warped into something unrecognizable, something unnatural. I couldn't comprehend how my wife, the woman I'd built a life with, could allow this connection. And Aiden, my own son, how had he fallen into this? Or worse, had she let him there? Questions spiraled. Was it emotional manipulation? Loneliness? A secret that had evolved over time? I had no answers, only agony. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I played the footage again. Not out of curiosity, but out of disbelief. I watched their eyes, their body language, the silent language shared between people hiding something forbidden. Every frame felt like a nail in the coffin of my family. The next morning, I sat across from them at the breakfast table, the camera hidden away, the footage burned into my memory. Layla asked if I wanted more coffee. Aiden quietly passed the toast. Their routines continued, but I saw through every smile now. Every glance. I nodded, pretending everything was fine. But I'd begun quietly documenting more. Their behavior. Their time alone. Messages. Patterns. Because if I was going to end this chapter of my life, I wanted to make sure it ended with truth, not assumptions. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just broken. And a broken man thinks carefully before he speaks. Because sometimes, the loudest truths come from the quietest mouths. I waited until the house was quiet. Layla was folding laundry in the bedroom. Aiden was in the backyard, scrolling on his phone, pretending life hadn't changed. I held the flash drive in my hand like it was a loaded weapon because in many ways, it was. I called them both into the living room. They came, casual and unsuspecting. Layla sat on the couch. Aiden stood, arms crossed. I didn't say a word. I simply reached for the remote, turned on the TV, and played the footage. The room fell still. No voices, just the slow unraveling of their secret, pixel by pixel. Aiden's hand on her knee, her smile, the lean in, the look. The moment that broke everything. Layla stood up, tears already welling in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like," she said quickly, voice shaking. "Please, I can explain." I didn't respond. Aiden looked pale, caught between fear and shame. "Dad, I held up a hand. "Stop." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. "I gave everything to this family," I said quietly. "Years of work, sacrifices, trust." Layla sobbed now, clutching her robe. "It was a mistake, it got confused, we were both hurting, and—" "You were his mother," I interrupted. My voice, though calm, carried weight. "And he was my son." Aiden stepped forward. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't mean for it to happen. She was always there when you weren't." I looked at him. My own blood. My legacy. And yet in that moment, I didn't recognize him. "I was gone a lot," I said. "But I never left you without love. I never left her without loyalty." I turned off the TV. The screen went black, but the image lingered in my mind like a scar. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I simply left the room. 2 days later, the divorce papers were signed. I arranged for Aiden to live with his maternal uncle in another city, somewhere far from the mess we'd made. I couldn't look at him without hearing her whisper, "Take it easy, son." The words echoed, over and over, like a curse wrapped in silk. I started therapy, not to fix what they broke, but to mend what I had left inside me. The loneliness was loud, the betrayal deeper than any cut. But day by day, I began to heal. The hardest part? It wasn't losing them. It was knowing they lost themselves long before I ever found out. Now I live quietly. No noise. No chaos. Just peace. And every now and then, I hear that whisper again. Not in my ears, but in my memory. A whisper that didn't just end a marriage. It ended everything I thought I knew about love.